This first email is from a lady who has been practicing real love for several years. She writes, "My oldest daughter was 16 when I first stumbled across real love. I responded by shoving it down her throat. Understandably, she didn't like that and became pretty resistant." Wow, is this a common mistake? We run into something that's really good, and you see it in everything, not just real love. People discover that broccoli juice is on TV. They saw a commercial, ironically, from broccoli producers, that broccoli juice is the cure for everything. So they try it. They're so enthusiastic that they feel better, even if they'd been eating chalk. And so then they tell every member of their family, and they send articles to it's just a common phenomenon. We find something that is at least appears to be good, and we spread it around with the initial zeal of a convert. Common. So she shoved it down her daughter's throat, and people don't like that. She continues, "I kept going, though, loving her and teaching her the best I could. Sometimes I could see the huge gap between what she needed and what I could offer her. And that nearly broke my heart." That's a really understandable thing, to feel brokenhearted by seeing what we've done to our children. We can't afford it. Really, anything that distracts us from happiness, we can't afford it. If I feel brokenhearted by what I've done to my children, I'm now distracted from and less able to love my children, which is the thing I want to do. I just talked to a lady today from England who when she goes to work, exits a train station that is right underneath the Manchester arena, where apparently yesterday, I don't watch the news, yesterday there was a suicide bomber, and my goodness, there were a couple dozen people killed and more dozen people than that wounded, and mayhem and chaos and fear. And naturally enough, she found herself riveted by all the news. The news of this person and that person and people sobbing on television, and that's what the news is actually become. It's not news. There's an entire movement now toward establishing actual news stations as opposed to entertainment stations, where, as the famous saying goes, if it bleeds, it leads. It's all drama. Not the pain of those people is real, but to me, it's just more drama. And I don't need to be distracted by that. Is there anything I can do right now to help those people who were injured in Manchester? No. Is there anything I can do to genuinely love and change the lives of the people who are immediately around me? Oh, yes, quite a bit. Well, this is not difficult math. I think I'll do that. So she says, I can see the gap between, what she needed and what I could offer, and it broke my heart. It was painful to see how much I wanted to love her, but I just didn't feel loved enough yet myself to do that. Yeah, in the beginning of learning real love, like reading the first half or third of the parenting book, it's torture because you see all the things you did wrong, but you're not yet able to do them right. Well, welcome to living and learning. That's just how it goes. You want to learn how to play the piano? Well, then for the first several years, if you're playing the piano, a great portion of the notes that you play are going to be wrong. Even the concert pianists play lots of wrong notes. This is how we learn. She continues, I'm grateful for the people who let me cry in their arms as I learned to deal with the pain that I had caused my own daughter. Bless them. I gave her the best I had then, and then I learned to do better. And other people stepped in at times to give her even more, to love my daughter in ways that I couldn't do. What a gift. Well, now she's 20 and in college, and she calls me all the time. What a joy. Do you get how cool this is? I mean, this is a kid who had real love shoved down her throat and she didn't want anything to do with it. But mom just kept persisting and loving her. And now that the kid's away at school, who does she call as an island of calm? Who does she call to rejuvenate? Mom, who persisted in learning how to be loving. Beautiful story. Last night, she continues, she called late and said that she was calling to refuel because so many people around her were in pain and she's been helping them as much as she could, and she needed my energy. At college and at work, she's really recognized the truth of how much pain people are in everywhere. She says, Mom, I can't believe the pain everybody's in. Everybody I talk to, these are the people who look perfect on the outside. These are the people that I used to want to be like. And now I learned that it's not as it looks. She continues her email. Friends have come to talk to her about how unhappy they are, and she's explained to them that their parents simply didn't love them the way they needed. She tells her friends that it's not their fault. That's the only reason to say to somebody you weren't loved by your parents as much as you needed, is so that you don't blame you. It's not to blame the parents. Boring. If we blame the parents now, we have to blame the grandparents and blah, 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 and I want to fall asleep. That's not interesting. So her daughter, she continues the email. She says, my daughter teaches them there's nothing wrong with them. And often they cry when they hear this. This is what they want to know, because from the attitude of their parents and others all their lives, they've gotten the opinion that something is wrong with them. My daughter told me, Mom, I say all the things that you would say. What mother would not give everything to hear this from a child? Mom, I tell people the things you would say. Oof, this is a mother who is loved and taught. The email continues. She said that she often asks her friends, why don't you call your mom or dad? And they tell her that, they would never let their parents know how they feel, because their parents would either A, not have the time, or B, they would just worry more about them. Note to parents, this is from the lady writing the email, and to caregivers, never tell kids that you're worried about them. It just makes them feel unconfident and weak. Last night, she said she's realizing how lucky she is to have a mom. Bless her. It's nothing less than she deserves. But so people have a real mom or a real dad. Boy, is that a fact. What is a parent? A parent is not somebody who contributed DNA so you could live. Dogs know how to do that. Trees know how to do that. A real parent is somebody who loves you, listens to you, teaches you, guides you. That's what a parent is. And here's this 20-year-old girl saying to her mother, I'm so lucky that I have a mother. She continues, Mom does. And she's quoting her daughter. She says, so few people have a real mom or a real dad, and they don't need both. Now, both is a bonus, but one really loving parent is enough. And the lady who's writing the letter is essentially raising this girl pretty much by herself. Our kids need a parent, and we need one too. This is Mom talking. We can't ever give to others what we don't have ourselves. So what's the moral of this story from Mom? No matter how inadequate you feel as a parent, if you get the love you need first, you can change your children's lives, no matter how old they are, and no matter how many mistakes you make in the process. I'm living proof of this. Prioritize real love for yourself. Get yourself a real love parent. Now, everybody who's listening, hear this. This is an adult woman saying, get yourself a real love parent. Sometimes we call it a wise person, but it really is more of a parent. A parent is somebody who loves and teaches. And most of us never had one. Well, most of us don't recover from that. Solution, obvious, get one. She continues and says, refuel frequently yourself, like my daughter described herself doing last night. If you'd asked me a few years or even months ago whether my oldest daughter and I could have had this kind of relationship, I would have said impossible. Real love really does work miracles. I get this kind of email from somewhere in the world pretty much every day. This one's especially well written, and especially well illustrates the principle of what a parent does. She didn't love her child, did not unconditionally love her child and teach her child for 16 years. And then she began to do it, and she did it wrong. Well, poorly. But she persisted. And now she has a 20-year-old daughter who, when she needs to refuel, as she's trying to love her friends at college, she calls her mother. Yeah, that's pretty touching to anybody. New subject. I've got to tell you what can happen when you lie, even just a tiny bit. So my granddaughter, Sydney, who's 11 years old, called my cell phone and she said, "Is Grandma there?" So clearly I was dispensable. I was not needed. Why she was calling my cell phone and asking if Grandma was there, I don't know. But I said she could call Grandma's cell. And Sydney said, "Well, I could tell you thank you too." And I was on the other end of the phone going, "I could tell you thank you too." I didn't know what she was talking about. So I said, "You're welcome." See, Grandma sends birthday presents to grandkids all the time with both of our names on the card. So I figured that was what was happening here, was that, she'd had a birthday. Grandma had sent her some birthday present, and that she was calling to thank me and to thank Grandma. And because Grandma wasn't there, she said, "Well, I could thank you too." And then I really stuck my foot in it, continuing my pretending that I knew what was going on. I said, "How was your birthday?" She said, "Fine." I should have caught on then. I said, "Oh, good. I'm glad you're having fun." Conversation ends. Later, I was passing the gratitude on to Grandma, to Donna, and she reminded me that the next day was Easter. So my attempt to pretend that I knew what was happening blew up in my face. I'm asking my granddaughter how her birthday was, and it turns out she was gotten an Easter gift. So I texted Sydney, 11, who said that, "Yeah, I was kind of wondering why you were asking about my birthday when it was in September." Moral of the story, as the previous writer said, it's stupid to lie. This was just an itty-bitty little teeny, "Oh, you're welcome" lie, but it's still a lie. I was pretending that I knew what was going on. I should have just said, "Thank you for what?" It either causes harm and loss of trust, or at the very least, you end up looking really stupid, which I did. New subject. This is about a family that has had a fair bit of conflict over the years. This is from the daughter who has really rapidly learned real love and actually lived it. She said this: "I had such an eye-opening experience yesterday. Me, my brother, my sister, and my mother were dancing in the kitchen last night." That's just such an unusual event to picture. Needless to say, I could not imagine dancing with my brother, my sister, and my mother or my father when I was a kid in the kitchen. She continues and says, "In the past, I could watch other people dance, but I could never relax and be myself. This time I noticed halfway through my dancing that I felt 100% comfortable dancing freely and being myself. My self-conscious tendency in that particular situation has disappeared. It's gone. I'm amazed. I'm amazed too. When love banishes fear, which it does. Love banishes fear better than anything else. In fact, I don't know anything else that does, not in a meaningful way. It tends to do it in an unpredictable pattern. So you might you feel loved and you lose your fear of spiders. No kidding. I know a lady who felt loved and she lost her fear of public speaking. Here's somebody who felt loved and lost her fear of dancing. She continues and says, of course, I still looked at my reflection a little bit in the window because I was feeling maybe slightly self-conscious and maybe even vain. Now, that's pretty honest. She says, but it was so eye-opening to see for myself that you're right. I really am growing and losing my fear. There have been times, what she's talking about is that she's wondered whether she's growing and losing her fear. And I told her, you get to live with yourself every single day. And I say this to a fair number of people. Every day you live with yourself all day long. So you see your progress by the second. So our progress is always an up and down thing. And if you measure your progress by the minute, well, that'll just make you crazy. Because you'll have a good minute and then a bad minute and a good minute. You don't know where you are. I get to watch her progress every few days and watch her grow. And when you put those snapshots together, like time-lapse photography, pretty obvious that she's becoming more confident and losing her fears. In fact, speaking back to her, your trust is just stunning. And this is what feeling love does. It's what feeling love does for all of us. It's just an amazing story. This is from a school teacher. I'm really not up for approaching the day today. I don't feel loving enough. Yesterday, I yelled at a kid who was disrupting my class. I feel embarrassed about that, and I feel like a failure. When I feel like this, I want to disengage and hide. Yuck. If you yelled at a child in class, you really did screw up. Here's a kid who never gets loved at home, which is why he was acting up in class, exactly why he was looking for power and control with his disrupting. And you responded by doing just what his parents do, by controlling him with anger and guilt and disappointment. So you got this part right, indeed. Yuck. And here is when you learn the most. This is great. I'm actually glad this happened to you. You learned that you were not full enough, not unconditionally loved enough to deal with a disruption on that particular occasion. Well, so what? You could feel bad about it, or you could just take it as information. You teach school all day. So when a child writes 2 + 2 = 5, we don't go, okay, end of life, send the child home, expel them. They can't come to school anymore. You just as well kill them because they're not teachable. No, you just teach the child that it's 4. That's it. It's information. In fact, it may very well be information that you had inadequately taught the child how to add. Who knows? This is just information for you. Your mistake. Now what? How do you respond to this information? Disengage, which you suggested. Oh, that's worse. That's awful. More yuck. Or you could, 1, see that you almost certainly don't have enough love overall in your life and learn from that. So what do? You get more love and trust it and believe it and keep it and remember it, just like we have talked about so many times. You become more stable and happy yourself, in which case it becomes far less likely you'll ever yell at a kid again. 2, you see that you have choices now. in situations like this. In the past, when a child has been disruptive and snotty or, whatever, you thought that blowing up is just the only thing you could do. It's the only thing that would work. Certainly, it got the kid to pay attention for a second, and you'd never discovered anything else that would make a child pay attention for a second. Well, now you got a choice. Just knowing that you have a choice will make you less afraid in these circumstances. I can't count how many times people have called and said, so what do I do in this situation? And I said, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I can describe, 3 or 4 choices that would be available to you that you may not know. And they instantly calm down. Just realizing, I'm not trapped. We don't like being trapped. We don't like being stuck. We don't like feeling chained to a wall. We don't like having a stake through our heart and then through the plywood behind us. We don't like that feeling. We like feeling that we can choose. So just knowing that you have a choice with this kid changes everything. So like what? Like what choices? Now let's get specific. And again, I'm not telling you what to do with this kid. I'm just describing a possible choice so that there is one. You could try this one. You could improvise on it. You could do an entirely different choice. Today, you just simply choose to be loving. You choose to be loving, which yesterday you didn't do. And at some point in the class, you turn to the kid and you say, Fred, yesterday I yelled at you. Now you say this to him with everybody in the class listening. I promise you everybody will be listening when you say this. And you say that was unloving and it was wrong of me. I was wrong. As a student, I don't remember any times that my teacher said, I was wrong. How many of us have ever heard our parents say, I was wrong? Actually, how often do you hear anybody say I was wrong? You say, that was unloving of me. Now, look into my eyes. You say, Fred, I was wrong to yell. That's the first subject. I was wrong. Now, second subject, not related to the first one. You were wrong to be disruptive. But now, back to the first subject. It was my job to teach you and care about you. When I'm a more caring teacher, you will listen better and disrupt less. So see, notice this isn't, I was wrong, but so were you. No, I was wrong. What you did was still wrong, but I had a choice to make that would have made it much less likely you would have done what you did. And I didn't do that. So I'll be a more caring teacher and you'll listen better and disrupt less. This is very disarming. For a child to hear a teacher say that they're wrong. Now, he might blow this off. Like he acts like he doesn't want to hear it and he goes to do something else and he's uncomfortable. He might be really uncomfortable because he may well have never heard an adult say they were wrong. He doesn't know what to do with this information. But he will hear it. He will, even if he acts like he's not. And it will plant a seed in him. He's never had an adult talk to him like this. And you will be memorable. Really. I can still remember in the 6th grade going to the library, and I used to just love to read. And it's a particular phase of my life. I like to read biographies. And I was, let's call it kind of a fast reader. So I would read 5, 6, 10 books in a day. And so I'd go to the library and I'd read through a book, and then I'd go to the librarian and ask to check out another book. This is, within 30 minutes. And I finally said, is it possible to take home more than one book? And she said, well, that's against the school policy. And then she went, but maybe we could forget the school policy. So this is an adult, for the first time in my life that I remember, who said, why don't we bend the rules? Because it would be better it would benefit you. I'll never forget her. I'll never forget what she looked like. She was Irish. She had red hair. I remember the color clothes that she wore. Couldn't tell you anybody else's color, anybody else's clothes. And so she let me take home as many books as I could carry. I learned to carry a lot of books. So she also made me physically stronger. It will be a memorable experience for you to do this with this kid. And the rest of the class will get to hear it. Then you go out of your way to involve this particular disruptive kid in class discussion. I can't tell you how beautiful it is when you ask a disruptive child a question that you have prepped him for so that you know he's going to get the answer to. Kids hate looking stupid. Adults do. So do kids. So you just ask him questions he already knows the answer to, or you turn his answer in some way to make it look like he was brilliant. Actually, most answers do have some measure of observation and brilliance in them. And then in some way point out that what he said was right. He's going to remember that too. So, that's just a couple of little points, but they're illustrations of what we talk about at the beginning and end of most video chats. The question here isn't how to change your approach to this kid. The question is, what would it look like if I brought love into this situation? Instead of how do I restore discipline to the class? That's what I hear teachers say to me all the time. And I go, wow, do you ever have the wrong question? That's the wrong question. If you want to bring discipline to the class, I suggest half-inch steel rebar, and you install it around each child's chair and lock them in, and you'll have perfect discipline. They won't be able to go anywhere, and they won't learn anything, and they'll hate you, and you'll have a terrible class. The question isn't discipline. It's how do I bring love into the situation? So you'll get there. I know a mother who is doing real love, and she writes that she has been less than loving toward her 3-year-old. And her daughter says, so, Mommy, now for the rest of the day, you have to do what Jesus would do. I adore 3-year-olds. They're old enough to walk and run and think. They haven't yet quite been told what they can't say. And they just blurt out these just delicious little pearls of wisdom that if we would listen to them, we would be much, much wiser. A Bonnie story, similar to a Sylvie story, since they happen to be in the same family. I call them Sylvie stories because they're stories about little kids. Bonnie's 3, and she's lying on the couch. My daughter occasionally calls me and gives me these, and I write them down. And just out of nowhere, she hadn't done anything right. She hadn't just been complimented. Nobody was trying to make her feel good, so it wasn't because of something she'd done or failed to do. She was just lying on the couch looking at the ceiling, and she turned to her mom and she said, Mom, I'm perfect. I just can't stop smiling when I picture a 3-year-old child saying, I'm perfect. A child who would believe that would feel confident and strong and caring and loving and not susceptible to being bullied or used, or it just goes on and on. She's not afraid. What she's really saying is, I really like who I am and I'm happy. That's pretty cool at 3. Not many adults could say that. Bruce, who is Bonnie's older brother, said to his mother the other day, Mom, today my teacher at school was angry when she spoke to me. And he stopped for a minute. He has this expression that he does, this very serious, as though he is pondering the calculation of pi to the 1000th decimal. And he says, I think it's okay, though, because maybe she wasn't taught right. Here's a 5-year-old explaining the misbehavior of his adult teacher who's like in her 60s. That's pretty good loving and teaching. We could all possibly learn from that. He decided not to be upset because he did what? He did event, judgment, feeling, reaction without even realizing what I don't think he's even been taught that series of principles, but he decided instead of she's a mean teacher and I hate her, or I'm afraid of her, he changed his judgment to I don't think she was taught. So I'm not going to be mad about it and I'm not going to be afraid of her. See that? And this was done by a 5-year-old. Sheesh. New subject. I know a woman experienced in real love who wrote and told me their husband, Max, fairly regularly gets angry at the cat. The cat who, poops on the carpet and coughs up hairballs and scratches things. I'm not a cat person, but apparently that's kind of like just what cats do. It doesn't sound like a particularly bad cat. He then yells at the cat, swings at the cat, kicks at the cat, stomps around, and is grumpy because of a hairball on the carpet, which he doesn't have to pick up anyway. And I told her she really needs to talk to him because anger is like toxic gas or any other poison. It affects the angry person, but it also affects every other person around. Harvard University has done studies where they've shown that little children stop playing. They thought this was a really clever study, but any parent would know this, especially any parent who's done any work in real love, that little children stop playing, stop having fun if there's any contention between any two adults in the room, even if they don't know the adults, even if there's zero criticism or anger directed at the child. Anger poisons the whole room. No household can be happy as long as anger continues. Full stop. She writes me back. Thank you for what you said. Last night, I did tell Max about his anger toward the cat, and I told him how uncomfortable it is for me when he's upset like that, even if it's not directed at me. And it affects our 5-year-old, who becomes visibly afraid and grumpy when Max is angry. Max was surprised. He said, really? It seems like you're making something of nothing. This is Max's response to her. So cute on Max's part. He's like a little child with his hand caught covered with paint and swishing paint all over the wall. And the parent says that the child is making a mess, and the child looks at, because I've seen this, and the child looks at the parent with his hand on the wall with this utterly bewildered expression, which says, what? You mean me? I don't know what you're talking about. Young kids are great at this, pretending they had no idea they were playing in paint or standing on the kitchen counter or eating all the cookies or whatever. There's a YouTube. I don't normally watch them, but there's a beautiful YouTube out. I don't know if you've looked up, I think, eating a cupcake and child denying it. I think if you did that, you'd find it. And here's this kid with his face covered with sprinkles and cake and frosting. And mom says, did you eat one of the cupcakes? No. Are you sure? And it looks really funny from kid looked like he was 2 or something like that. But as adults, we do the same thing. So here's Max, an adult. We're going to say he's, 40 years old. And he's going, really? It seems like you're making something out of nothing. Honey, Max is what is called playing you, just like kids do. He knows that anger has an effect on everybody. He's not stupid. And see, you are just about to credit him with not knowing any better. Don't do that. He does know better. He can feel that he's not happy when he's mad at the cat. And he knows that other people don't like his anger either. For example, at work, do you think he likes it when somebody else is angry at work and poisons the environment at work? Of course he doesn't. He's been there when other people are angry, and he doesn't like it a bit. It's like being on a football team and the coach is screaming at a particular kid on the team. It's not all that fun to be around. So, no, honey, he's playing you. So she writes the next day and says, it's funny you said that Max played me and that he knows anger affects others, because you're right. He sees it at work. You're right. He played me yesterday, but today I got the perfect opportunity to bring it up again. And your comment helped me see it clearly again. He talked about a guy at work who drains him because he's always complaining, grumpy, and annoyed at other people. So I told Max, my husband, that that's exactly what I meant about his effect on everybody in the house when he's angry with the cat. Even if it's not directed at us, anger still affects everybody in the room, often in the building. You're a genius. Way to go to have the courage to do that. She continues, and he couldn't argue with it because he had just been talking about the effect on him of his fellow employee being grouchy and grumpy. He'd been saying the same thing. It would not have occurred to me to tell him that unless you said, he sees this all the time at work. So it really helped me. And for everybody listening, and this is why we're on the video chats. This is it. Our lives change as two things happen: loving and teaching. You can feel some of the loving on the video chat. If you pay attention, you can feel my caring about you. That's easier to do with other people in person or in one-to-one conversations on the phone or Skype. But the teaching part gives us additional choices. Love gives us the ability to execute them. But as we learn, we grow in our ability to make choices. Feeling loved is by far the most important thing. But sometimes we need to understand a principle or see illustrations of a principle, like when I gave a potential answer to the teacher who had been, unkind to her student, before we can implement it ourselves or before we can bring it up with others. So you did nice work, kid. I know a man, Daniel, we'll call him, who was divorced several years ago from a truly crazy, attacking person. And in her defense, he was crazy and attacking at the time, too. They have two kids now who are about, 10, and they share custody. So the kids go back and forth between mom and dad. When I say they're about 10, they might be 8 and 10 or 9 and 11. I don't remember. So they share custody. And when they're with her, she yells at them. And she is abusive. I mean, just calls them names, tells them that they're stupid. She makes them just feel terrible. And her new partner does the same to the kids. And it scares the children. So I recommended several things to him. First, you love them more. You proactively sit down with them and read stories to them. You look into their eyes. You ask them how they're doing. You ask them how they feel at mom's house when they're being yelled at. You ask them to tell you every time that they're being yelled at. You pay more attention to them. You love them. He had never before, for example, held his children. Here, 2 10-year-old kids, and this adult man had never held his children. Well, now he holds them. He expresses verbally his love to them more. It's making a huge difference in the happiness of his children, even though mom in another house is being verbally and emotionally abusive. Then, so that's the loving part. Here's an instructional part. Tell them what to do when they're yelled at. Give them choices, because one of the things that we absolutely hate is being helpless. Studies have been done about PTSD, and people tend to suffer more from PTSD if in the situation they were helpless. So, for example, there's a ship that is wrecked and almost sinks, and it's at sea for 20 days before they find it. And the people who are in charge of keeping the ship afloat, the people who have something to do, the people who have a role, the people who are not helpless tend not to suffer from PTSD. Whereas the people who just sit around kind of hoping they're going to live, turns out they don't do nearly as well. So you're going to give your children choices. You're going to tell them what to do when they're yelled at. They get to say to their yelling mother, and this can be very sobering, I don't like being yelled at. You can tell me what you want. You can tell me what I've done. You can tell me what you'd like me to do, but you don't need to yell at me. A 10-year-old is old enough to say this. We say it to people at work. A 10-year-old can say it to her mother. They can say, I don't like being called stupid. I don't like being called any other name. You can tell me what you want to communicate to me without doing that. Now, here's a third choice. If the yelling continues, you can teach them to leave the house and go to your house or get a cab. Arrange with a cab company ahead of time that you've paid their fare from mom's house to your house, and they just get in the cab and come. Every cab driver, I don't know about Uber, but every cab driver is bonded. Pretty much you can trust cab drivers. My kids all tried a cab once when they were late for school. Or you can arrange with a neighbor for them to go to the neighbor's house. But see, now they have choices. So then, to continue the story, the other day, they did just exactly what Dad said. They got yelled at. They told their mother they didn't like being yelled at. Her partner was yelling at them, so they walked out of the house. And Dad was at work out of town, and he was very upset. And he called me, and he was upset even though his new partner, Dad's new partner, and his sister were there to take care of the kids. So the kids were okay, but Dad kept being upset. And I finally said to him, here's what you need to remember. There's something askew with your goals. What you want is to protect your children from the verbal abuse of your ex. You want them to live in a world where they won't get hurt. That is not our job as parents, and it can't be done. They're going to go to school and somebody's going to abuse them. Other kids are, teachers will. Welcome to life. It's not our job to protect our kids. What matters is that they learn to deal with it. It's how they respond to it. Yeah, you would want to protect them from somebody wielding a gun and going through the school and killing people, but we're not talking about that. So your goal is to love them and teach them, and only on rare occasions to protect them, to teach them things to watch out for that might have consequences that they're just too young to deal with. But we can't protect them from everything. And if she's abusive enough for them to walk out, I'm actually thrilled, because every time they have to walk out of the house because she's verbally abusive enough, then you're going to write down the date and time that it happened. And then the next time that they have to walk out of the house, you have them call 911 and the police come and they mediate the dispute between the abusive parents and the children. And now we have yet another written record, and one of them is a police record. This gets kind of scary to the abusive parent. I've been through this many, many times. It usually stops the abuse entirely. Sometimes it doesn't, and you still win, because if she keeps being abusive enough, she loses custody of the kids. So your ex will either become nicer, which is a win, or she'll become worse, and it's still a win, because you get the kids. But you're being afraid for them, they lose. And so do you, because you teach them fear. So you can't lose as long as your goal is not to protect them from everything. That's the takeaway from this for you. New subject. Here's somebody who writes and says, my niece, Sally, asked me if I would help her in planning a family reunion. Sounds reasonable. To be held in the summer of 2018, next year. She's wanted this for years, since the last family reunion in our family was, we can't remember. It was years ago. So it's a huge undertaking because there's a lot of people in our family and they're scattered over many states. And I've known for years that Sally, my niece, has always been pretty difficult to work with. But after weighing out the pros and cons, 2 months ago, I agreed to help her put on the family reunion. The past 2 months have been somewhere between tough and hellish. Sally has been completely irresponsible about doing anything that she agrees to do. She doesn't call me back. She gives me assignments. I do them. But part of the assignment is that she cooperates in doing something else that, interlocks and interacts with what I'm supposed to do. She doesn't call me back. It just goes on and on. I've been frustrated and irritated, which of course is a reflection of my own lack of love. I really thought I could stay full enough to unconditionally love my niece, but I was wrong. So now what? This is a great illustration of learning. It's not that you failed here. You just thought you were loving enough to deal with your niece, who you already knew was difficult, and now you're going to work together on a difficult project, and you learned, I can't handle this. Good. And right now you feel sort of trapped because you've made an announcement to the entire family, let's say all 900 of them, that you're going to do this together, you and Sally. So everybody's counting on this reunion, and you've made a promise. You feel trapped. I'll help you. You're not trapped. You both agreed to what your tasks would be in accomplishing this reunion. You essentially made a contract. I will do this, you will do this, and the reunion will happen. You made a contract. Now it has become obvious that she's not going to do her part. So listen to me carefully. She's already made it obvious that she will not do her part. So you don't do what everybody does, and that is, well, if I'm a nice person, then I'll give her another chance. I'm going to guess you've already given her 40 chances to do things and she hasn't done them. So it becomes ridiculous to say, just like I've said to wives of husbands who have hit them, 40 times, and they say, well, I'll explain to him that if he does this again, no, we've done that. No more if you don't do this or you don't do that. We're finished. So now the choices are really simple. And there's lots of them. I'm going to give you just an illustration of 4 choices you can make so you don't feel trapped. I'm not suggesting you make one of these choices. I have no personal attachment to any of these choices. I won't be attending the family reunion. So first, you could just fire her. You could just say, you're released from all responsibility. She will protest. She will say, I will do it. And you say, no, we're not negotiating this anymore because you've already proven that you can't do it. So you could fire her and get somebody else to do her part. That's if you want to continue. Second choice, don't have the reunion. Apparently your family has been successfully not having reunions for many years. This would be one more year where you didn't. Don't have it. Simply announce that it has been canceled. You don't need to explain why. In fact, don't write. We're not having a family reunion because of Sally. Tempting. No, you just say it's been canceled. And then if somebody else still really wants to do it, well, then they'll pop out of the woodwork and they'll do it. Third choice, you could just do the reunion yourself. If you really want to have it, just do it. And fourth, you could turn the whole thing over to like a committee. You could help or not. And then just live with how the committee makes the reunion happen. I've been to events like this, and there's always somebody who doesn't do their job. And so you get there, and somebody was in charge of the buns, and somebody was in charge of the hot dogs, and the hot dog person just didn't show up. Well, you'll have lots of carbohydrates for your reunion. You just live with it. You just have fun talking with people. You starve for a little bit, and then you go to Dairy Queen afterward, or the local vegan smoothie shop. I don't care where you go. But you're not trapped. And you don't have to feel bad about Sally. You just thought you could work it out, and it turns out, nope, you're not ready for that kind of stress. New subject. I make a great number of appointments to talk to people. Lots. Every single day, usually every single hour, I make several. As a surgeon, I made tens of thousands of appointments. I couldn't even imagine sitting down and counting how many that would be. And I have learned on the whole that if somebody is 3 minutes late or more, there's something about 3 minutes. The odds are very high, about 50%, that they won't make it to the appointment at all. People tend to show up on time or within 3 minutes of on time, or they don't come. So after 3 minutes past the appointed time, now, when I make an appointment for a phone call, for example, I just move on to other things. I call somebody that I said I would work in to my schedule. I go outside. I write a blog. I work on a video chat like I'm doing right now. Whatever. Because I don't have the time to sit around and wait for the 2 hours that it takes for that person to go, oh crap, I forgot my appointment. And then they call. Or to wait for the days that it would take for them to never call. I don't have that kind of time. So I'll give you 3 minutes to be late. It's not a punishment. It's not even a lesson. I'm not trying to teach somebody punctuality. That's actually really not something I'm interested in doing, like teaching somebody gymnastics. Not interested in that either. It's just a practical response on my part to conserve my time. Is that selfish? Well, since I'm the only person on earth who can control my time, I would just call it practical rather than selfish. It is, after all, my time. Is it selfish when I drive my car? No, I paid for the car. It's mine, and I get to do the same with my time. Recently, a woman didn't show up. She'd made an appointment to talk to me. She failed to show up within the 3 minutes after the appointment. So I went on to another call. I called somebody who I had said, if I get an opening, I will call you. She showed up 2 minutes later, so 5 minutes late to the appointment. I was already occupied. She called repeatedly. She called by Skype over and over. You know that incredibly annoying sound that Skype makes? Boom, 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 boom. Over. She called repeatedly, texted, called my home, went on and on, finally texted, can you talk now? I couldn't talk because I was in the bathroom. I am endlessly impressed with the creativity of the reasons people come up with. But in the end, they never make sense. Pretty much everybody that I know has a cell phone small enough to carry to the bathroom, for example. I know people, in fact, who go to the bathroom to escape their children to text all of their friends. So it is a proven fact that people can text in bathrooms. People are not 5 minutes late to a cruise ship. People are not 5 minutes late to an airplane. Well, maybe once, but that's the end of that. Or lottery tickets apparently have an expiration date. So you win $50 million, but you're 5 minutes late. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So let's take the excuse in the bathroom. People do that all the time. And she chose to spend 5 minutes doing something else instead of going to the bathroom 5 minutes earlier, or so that she could make her call. We're always making choices. I have no criticism of hers. Get that clear. I'm not mad at her because she was late, because 3 minutes later, I was doing something else. Like, for example, she was with somebody else and she couldn't bring herself to end what it was that she was saying so she could be on time. We do this kind of thing all the time. We want to avoid disappointing the person in front of us. And in the process, we guarantee inconveniencing the next person, because we live to avoid disapproval in this moment. So I guarantee that I won't disappoint you right now, but I guarantee I'm going to disappoint the next person and probably everybody else for the rest of the day. Doctors are pretty famous for doing this. They set up schedules that they know are crowded ahead of time, and they know that emergencies are going to come in, so they're screwed before the day even begins. Some are smarter. I have a couple that are pretty bright about this. They have figured this all in, and I love going to these guys' places because they're never late. So it's not about the bathroom. It's not about forgetting. It's about a fear of disappointing people. It's about not planning. It's about not caring about people. And there's a lesson here for all of us. It is not about my being inconvenienced by the woman who called late. That's not the point of the story. She cost me actually nothing, because I was working during the 3 minutes she was late. I immediately went on to another call, so she cost me a moment's thought. That's it. I always have backup stuff to do. So it's not about that. The lesson here is for all of us as we make excuses for our not being responsible. We can almost always be more responsible. And see, being loved, loving, and responsible are the three legs to being happy. So what can I do, as we've talked about many times, what can I do to bring more love into this situation? What can I do to bring more responsibility into this situation? What can I do to be more trusting in this situation or with this person so that I can feel more loved, so that I can feel loved, loving, and responsible, and thereby be profoundly happy? So just like the woman who called me and talked about the Manchester bombing, which was last night, I could have just consoled her. Oh, it's really terrible. And yes, there are all these deaths. And gosh, I guess we could have sat and watched video clips on YouTube together till we were dead. No, I just loved her. I just taught her some possibilities so she didn't feel trapped. So instead of watching the news and finding out what's going on, just look at the website for the trains that run to the place where you work and find out when that particular train station is anticipated to reopen. In other words, what can I do that would be responsible? Because I'm not working today, this is a suggestion I was making to her. What could I do that would be more loving to another human being? Who could I call that was affected by this, where I could make a call so that they felt more calm and less panicked and less involved in all the drama? So she's made choices to be more loving, to feel more loved, and to be more responsible. And as a result, rather than spending the rest of the day dramatizing over a truly tragic event, she's chosen to be happy. And that's a choice we can make all day, every day. We'll see you in a week.